both of which I intend to do tonight. However, it's storming out there. Not that I think that's going to affect anything. I haven't even seen the power blink, but hopefully I can get through this without knocking me off the grid. So here's what I'm doing. I am taking the Essential Ernest Holmes class with Jesse Jennings. And because of that, I am going to read the Essential Ernest Holmes. Now, it is not like I have not read this book before. I'm sure I've read it several times. However, one of the things that I have noticed is that when I read these books out loud on Facebook Live, I get way more out of the reading than if I'm trying to do it silently. I'm dyslexic and ADHD. I'm more hyperactive than ADD, but still. So this actually helps me to concentrate, and it apparently benefits other people too. Now, here's the one thing that you do need to know. This is not going to be a clean reading at all. And I will say this every time, because what's going to happen is I'm going to read something and I'm going to respond to it. You're going to get some commentary along the way. Here's what you need to know. I am a Science of Mind minister. I have been a Science of Mind minister since 2017. I have been a Science of Mind practitioner since 2013, maybe. I think I may have, I don't know. 2000, maybe even, no, that's when I went to ministerial school, 2010. So, okay, I have been in Science of Mind since 2005. So I have more than 20 years in the study. So, when I comment, you are getting 21 years of experience in Science of Mind. I am also one of Jesse's students. Jesse is my senior minister. He is the minister that I have taken most of my classes with until I went to ministerial school. And I had some fantastic teachers in ministerial school. So, that is what you are going to get. Now, what we are doing in this particular reading is we are going to read all of the intro. Now, the way he has this book set up, you're going to read selections of pages. I'm going to do this by chapter. So we are going to do the foreword and the intro and all of that because it's good stuff and I don't want you to miss out on it. Okay? And then I'm going to turn the video off, wait 5 minutes, turn the video back on, and we will do chapter 1. Now, in his book, you're going to stop on page 27. Okay, fine. If you're reading along with me, you just stop in there. Otherwise, you're just going to get chapter 1. So, and then for week 3, he has us reading chapter 2 and part of chapter 3. So, that's not going to happen. I'm going to read you chapter 2, and then I'm going to read you chapter 3. That's the way we're going to do this. We're going to do this in chapters. So you can just stop listening whenever you want. Okay? All right. So that is how we are going to do this. Now, The Essential Ernest Holmes is a book put together of Ernest Holmes' writings that came from a variety of places. So this is a collection of his works. This is not a collection that Ernest put together. This is a collection that Jesse Jennings put together. Reverend Jesse Jennings put together. And he is the senior minister of Creative Life Spiritual Center in Utah. So that is what this is. This is the book he put together. And it's a wonderful book. So, because he pulled from the magazine and from the books and from everything. So this is just kind of a primer on Ernest Holmes. And frankly, it's probably better to start with something like this than the Science of Mind textbook. Because I have heard from multiple people that when they started with the textbook, they put the textbook away, put the textbook down, and went away for a while. Okay? So I never recommend people start with the textbook. I recommend you start with this thing called You. That's my personal favorite. So that is what we're going to get up to. So now that you kind of know what you're getting into with me here, and I will archive this both on the Running Rev Ryan YouTube channel and on the Creative Life YouTube channel for the sole purpose of, because this is the book he's using in one of his classes. So that will be available. All right. So let's get on with this. Oh, and for the purposes of this class, we are using a blue highlighter. I like to use different highlighters on different books. Okay, so as I said, I am going to start with the very first thing in this book, which is even before the foreword, and it is simply a quote from Ernest Holmes, and then there is a quote from Virgil underneath it. So, here's where we begin. You may be sure of this. There is an integrity to your soul, such as you will find nowhere else in the universe. Here you will meet life. Here you will decide. And here you may neutralize the thought patterns of the ages by simply denying them and saying something greater than that, and I believe in it. There is a power greater than I am, and I accept it. And no matter what the mistakes are, the universe holds nothing against us, ever. Ernest Holmes. Happy are they who know the causes of things. Virgil. And now we move on to the foreword. Selecting the core of Ernest Holmes' writings has been a joyful exercise and a highly subjective one. To me, everything he expressed is worth hearing. We may run across the same ideas stated numerous different ways from book to book, but they are extraordinary ideas, and the more we hear them, the more likely we are to let them reshape our beliefs about the world and how it works. When we encounter them, at the least, we are a little more peaceful, a little more happy. At most, our lives are completely transformed. Some of the writings included here are from the textbook of the institution he founded and his masterwork, The Science of Mind, a hugely worthwhile study in both the standard 1938 version and the 1926 original. Excerpts deal with Ernest's occasionally overlooked insights on sexuality and psychic phenomena. Also featured are selections from This Thing Called You and This Thing Called Life. Well, actually, he has it in the opposite order. I just did it backwards. Which, when read completely, help to personalize Ernest's freeing message. Selections from The Voice Celestial, an astonishing book-length epic poem that Ernest wrote with his brother Fenwick, begin each chapter here, but the whole work warrants devouring, which, by the way, I have read, and it is on my YouTube channel, and I think I have it on the Creative Life Spiritual Center channel. It may not be complete on that channel, though, but I have read The Voice Celestial, and it is phenomenal. I highly recommend The Voice Celestial, and like I said, I have read it to you if you don't want to read it yourself. So, it's really, 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 really good. Okay, back to, and I am very taken with the 3 books compiled, mostly from Ernest's class lectures to practitioners by the late George Bendall. The Anatomy of Healing Prayer, Ideas of Power, and the Philosophy of Ernest Holmes. As presented here, they reveal a chatty, relaxed individual in his perfect element, teaching. In assembling this material, I refer to the man by his given name, as was the practice among all who knew him, and I have altered as little as reasonably possible in his words. Ellipses are mostly mine, sometimes his. Where mine, I've skipped either his brief restatements of a preceding thought or a favorite verse of poetry or Bible passage he used to punctuate a point. Also, Ernest wrote as energetically as he spoke, so in the same sentence he might emphasize a statement in a noisy mixture of italics or all capitals. I have put both in italics for sheer ease of reading. I kept his vagaries of the initial capitalizations of such words as life, reality, truth, and universe, and would point out to anyone new to his work that over the course of his writing life, he used several terms for deity interchangeably, chiefly God or Father, he, and presence and spirit or Father, Mother, God, that or it, and life reality, truth, and universe were synonyms for it. As to his exclusive use of the male pronouns in generic situations, which may be a little jarring in the modern ear of either gender, the whole gist of his teachings makes clear that he meant neither offense nor exclusion in wording things as he did. Okay, these terms have been left as Ernest rendered them. I'm not going to do that. Jesse may have done that, but I probably will not do that. I am in the habit of gender neutraling. It is something that I have been doing for going on 5 years now. So it is just who I am and what I do. So it will happen whether I intend to do it or not. And mostly I do it intentionally because as a woman, I get tired of saying he and him all the time. I get tired of saying man. So if you hear me say humanity, most likely Ernest said man. But as I said, this is me reading it. I'm going to do it a little differently. So Jesse left it the way he did it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just warning you up ahead. Okay, so that was the forward. Now we are going to do the introduction. An obituary article in the April 8th, 1960 Los Angeles Times called him one of America's leading churchmen philosophers, the active leader of a denomination of more than 100,000 members in 62 churches throughout the United States, whose writings have been followed by many famous religious thinkers and authors, including Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Ernest Schertfeld, I don't know how to say his middle name, Schertfeld Holmes, hopefully I don't have to do that again, had passed away at the age of 72, leaving behind a legacy that only now is beginning to really flourish in the world. Being a spiritual genius just naturally puts you ahead of your time. Ernest was a butcher's apprentice, scoutmaster, purchasing agent, and self-taught lecturer whose steel trap intellect and personal charisma eventually led people by the thousands to his lectures in a succession of ever larger venues across greater Los Angeles and periodically elsewhere. He published his first book, Creative Mind, in 1918 at the age of 31. He married a widowed opera singer, Hazel Foster, fairly late in life, had no children, and loved company and conversation, often dining with entertainers one day and university department heads the next. He started a magazine, Uplift, which in 1927 became Science of Mind and is still published monthly. His lectures caused some to seek him out for in-depth mentoring, which grew into the Institute of Religious Science and Philosophy, where men and women, where people could be trained as practitioners of the art of spiritual mind treatment, the particular form of affirmative prayer he was developing. Recollections by his longtime friend and colleague Reginald Armour and others indicate that Ernest was genuinely surprised at the massive turnouts for his public talks and took it not to mean that he was anyone special, but as a sign that people were hungering for anyone, to offer them consistent, logical, spiritual nourishment. He especially liked that his audiences came from all walks of life and encouraged them to take what they learned from him back into their own houses of worship to enhance their experience of the spiritual path they were already on. Still, it was inevitable that sooner or later, having tried this, some would return to him and complain how their original affiliations just didn't fit them anymore. And would he please start a church? His initial alarm at this idea is chronicled in several places. See Chapter 8. And it is a credit to the church he did start that his reaction still gets brought up among religious science clergy and congregants in the form of, are we doing the right thing? As a religious science minister, I have heard committee deliberations on everything from writing a new mission statement to improving ministerial training fall back to the same question. Are we really a church? What evidently swayed him into going the religious route was a combination of practicality, it was what the people wanted, and ingenuity. A church organization would be cobbled together that could model the essence of the science of mind teaching, democratic, equitable, and honoring of the direct spiritual experience of everybody alike, rather than enforcing one person's divine revelation handed down through the generations as stale but rigid dogma. Whereas the practicality may have suffered somewhat over time, there are not today millions of card-carrying religious scientists, nor churches in every neighborhood, except in Los Angeles, where it all started. The ingenuity lingers on, practically in its sense of human equity, or particularly in its sense of human equity. For example, while Ernest was in many respects a man of his era, his denomination was among the first of any stripe in America to license and ordain women in its ministry. The equitable aspect wasn't always seamless. The third branch church to be organized and chartered was in East Los Angeles, led by Reverend J. Arthur Twine, an African American, with a congregation both black and white. While some complaints were murmured about this, resulting in the June 1945 issue of Science and Mind magazine dropping East Side from first to last in the hitherto alphabetical order listing of metropolitan LA branches, and tacking on the designation colored. Ernest arranged with his friend, Reverend Twine, to go there and speak. To a hushed, packed house, he began, I have been told that too many non-Caucasians attend these lectures. True, there are Caucasians and non-Caucasians in this congregation, but this we must affirm. We are all children of one living God, one life that permeates all, without exception, one intelligence that governs all, and, most important, every person who abides in the universe is a significant entity in the one universal consciousness. Our doors will forever be open to all. Whoever you are, be proud. You are a divine idea in the mind of God. The magazine immediately reverted to the way it had been. Somebody had briefly bowed to the segregationist conventions of the day, only to be reminded that Ernest's teaching were anything but conventional or exclusive. Profound influences on Ernest's thinking include Ralph Waldo Emerson, whose transcendentalist essays he had read growing up in rural Maine, the Christian Science doctrine of Mary Baker Eddy, which he encountered in Boston, and the mental science ideas of the British judge Thomas Troward. He called himself, and later his organization, Christian, but defined true Christianity as adherence to the specific teachings of Jesus on forgiveness, loving one another, prayer and faith believing, and God as a loving father rather than a cruel disciplinarian. He rejected all notions of duality, whether of opposing good and evil forces wrestling over the world's soul, or obstinate humankind and its grieving creator, or real mind versus illusionary matter. Everything, he said, could be reconciled into one thing itself, something infinite, eternal, ever fully present and creative, and utterly begging of description, so that all we have left to call it is God. Getting to know Ernest Holmes through his work, I find someone who was modest about his own abilities and relentless in his elevation of everybody else's. He felt that he knew what made people tick, yet throughout his life, he seems never to have met a person who didn't intrigue him with his newness, always remaining willing to be astonished by what he found in human actions and reactions. Similarly, while setting forth a series of spiritual laws that describe the universe as a whole system, he rejoiced in the likelihood that new laws of spirit and matter would sometime be found to encompass what was already known, in the same way that laws governing flight build upon the law of gravity. He insisted that his teachings remain forever open at the top when entrusted to the structures he left behind. Even if religious science is, as such, should become a huge presence in the world, or the next great spiritual impulsion, as he styled it, the light Ernest Holmes cast will always outpace the groups and writings that travel under his name. The obituary mentions Dr. Peel's acquaintance with Ernest's work, but cannot enumerate the countless number of leaders in every field who, at some point, crossed paths then and since with the ideas Ernest espoused. Human potential and self-help books dominate the publishing industry today. Fundamentalist firebrands who would turn and run from Ernest's overall theology nevertheless teach positive thinking and praying the answer instead of the problem. Medical schools produced guided imagery tapes, while corporations offer stress reduction classes and meditation periods to executives. The new consciousness in our world doesn't come from any one person or theory. It's a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern discovery, from medieval labyrinths to quantum physics. Ernest was a masterful synthesizer. What it all boils down to, though, is this: all is one. Thoughts and feelings mesh into creative beliefs, which then outpicture as qualities of personal experience. Mind and body are unified, Mind and body are a unified whole. Earth and her inhabitants interrelate in ways we had not imagined. And the bottom of it all is not some tiny originating stuff, as at the bottom of a cup of tea, but pure and intelligent energy that layers itself as patterns on into infinity, universal mind. From the very first time I encountered the ideas of Ernest Holmes, they have felt like the exquisitely exact words to the music already inside of me. I resist the urge to gush about his being the greatest this or the most illumined that. It's a little like betting that Jesus could out-heal Buddha. Ernest did not invent the concept of wholeness and oneness. He called his work a correlation, and in fact paid so much homage to his predecessors that one almost wishes he would have stopped to take more vows himself along the way. His gift was to state the wisdom of the ages fluently, persuasively, engagingly, with nary a pompous moment. And his dream was simply to have us all be well and happy, knowing what we know and being who we are, while graciously extending this awareness to the fullness of majesty of life to all the world's people, that the living spirit shall through us walk anew into its own creation, and a new glory come with a new dawn. Okay, so the last part I'm going to do, because this is part 1, law of mind, is there is a page right here, and this is from Reginald Armour That Was Ernest. So this is taken from Reginald Armour's book, That Was Ernest, which is one of 3 biographies of Ernest Holmes. So I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to start chapter 1. But I'm going to cut this video off and start a new video for that. Okay? So, Brother Fenwick had been an ordained minister, and in 1910, seeking a warmer climate for reasons of health, had settled in the Los Angeles suburb of Venice, where he became a home missionary and built a small, thriving church. Fenwick's letters had spoken glowingly of Los Angeles' constant good weather and the rich scenery. In 1912, Ernest, then 25 and fresh from his Chappaqua experience, thought that it might be worthwhile to make an exploratory visit to California to do dramatic readings in churches. He found Los Angeles an exciting place, a glowing city of progressive people in a ferment of expanding their horizons, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. It was a community of stimulating intellectuals. Anything that anyone might want to study was taught there. And he did study. He read and studied everything he could get a hold of. No one single thing. From the beginning, as he later put it, I didn't take one bondage away from myself only to create another. I have always been very careful about that. Especially of interest, though, was what went by the name of New Thought. It was looser, more open, and based as much as possible on results rather than on the additional element of somebody's theology and revelation. His early reading had convinced him that no one of the truth movement leaders or doctrines contained the whole truth. Perhaps the whole truth was too much for one person. He early began toying with the idea of synthesis. Reginald Armour, That Was Ernest. Okay, so now we're going to take a pause. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then we are going to restart this video and do chapter 1. So that was the foreword, introduction, various other sundries at the beginning of the Essential Ernest Holmes. So now, I'm going to pause, and then we will do chapter 1. All right. So